that, I want to lead with this insane report, courtesy of 60 Minutes. The United States sent 238 migrants to a Salvadoran mega prison that is, of course, Sicat, the slave labor camp. Documents indicate most have no apparent criminal records. 3 weeks ago, 238 Venezuelan migrants were flown from Texas to a maximum security prison in El Salvador. The country's president offered to take them, and the Trump administration used a law not invoked since World War II to send them, claiming they are all terrorists and violent gang members. That is the Alien and Sedition Acts, which, of course, was last activated as a justification for Japanese internment. That law basically gives the president unilateral ability to deport people who he deems are national security threats. These, of course, have been challenged by multiple courts all across the country, and there has been extensive reporting on this, as is literally mentioned a couple paragraphs down. The government has released very little information about the men, but through internal government documents, we've obtained a list of their identities and found that an overwhelming majority have no apparent criminal convictions or even criminal charges. They are now prisoners. This is massive. This is massively consequential reporting because the Trump administration and all of the Nazis that surround him and all of the demons that are associated with ICE have argued that these people being deported are rapists, violent criminals, gang members, people who pose a threat to society, which is not the case. And we know this is not the case because all of the data collected on crime committed by undocumented migrants is negligible when compared to natural born U.S. citizens. For the year of 2024, there were 30 homicides and manslaughters committed by undocumented migrants. Of course, that is 30 too many, but that does not even come close to comparing the same amount of murders committed by natural born U.S. citizens. It is an insane and racist justification to assume that a brown-skinned person who speaks Spanish and has a couple tattoos is a member of MS-13. Among them, a makeup artist, a soccer player, and a food delivery driver being held in a place so harsh that El Salvador's justice minister once said the only way out is in a coffin. There was another man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was here in the United States on protected status, and he wound up getting sent to CCOT as well. One of these folks, I believe it was the makeup artist, was arrested for having an autism awareness tattoo in honor of his brother. There was another person who was arrested because they had tattoos in honor of their mother and father. These people are law-abiding citizens. The majority, nearly 100% of all immigrants who come to this country do so to escape the economic and political instabilities of their home nations. They come to the United States because they see prosperity. They see a place in which they can rebuild their lives. They are not coming here to sow unrest. They are not coming here as a part of MS-13. There isn't some grand conspiracy by all of the leaders of these Latin American countries where they are directly sending criminals to the United States. It is a farce. The shackled men were forced to lower their heads and bodies as they were unloaded from buses and taken to El Salvador's mega prison known as the Terrorism Confinement Center, or CCOP. Andrei Hernandez Romero was one of them. Lindsay Togzalowski. This is Mr. Romero's attorney. He's a 31-year-old Venezuelan. He's a makeup artist. He's a gay man. He loves to do theater. He was a part of a theater troupe in his hometown. Landry's attorney says he does not have a criminal record in the United States or Venezuela. She says he left his home country last year because he was targeted for being gay and his political views. Notice how this is a Venezuelan person who was deported to El Salvador. There have been remarks made by people within the Trump administration that even natural-born citizens, United States citizens like myself, would be sent to El Salvador. if they protested Tesla, if they did what Pam Bondi considers domestic terrorism against Tesla. This is so remarkably and openly fascist, and it's not getting the appropriate amount of coverage. It is not getting the necessary severity level of coverage as well, because it starts with undocumented migrants who are labeled as criminals. You strip away their due process and you manufacture consent because people believe that if they're a U.S. citizen, they are safe. But here's the thing: if there is no due process, there are no citizens. There is no way to differentiate between a non citizen and a citizen. If someone is accused of a crime, regardless of whether they're a citizen or not, the Constitution states that a person who lives in the United States is guaranteed due process. And during that due process is when you would discover their citizenship status or not. If they are a citizen who committed a crime, they go to prison. If they are a non-citizen who committed a crime, they're either sent to prison or they are sent back to their home country. Another thing about Venezuela in particular, the United States government actively plays a role in more people coming to this country when you consider the nonstop coups and the coup attempts that have been done all throughout Latin and Central America, the sanctions in particular that were levied on Venezuela. The United States is deliberately causing social and economic and political unrest, and that is why there are more and more immigrants attempting to come in to this country. Last May, Andrew made the long trek north through the Darien Gap to Mexico, where he eventually got an appointment to seek asylum in the United States. At a legal border crossing near San Diego, he was taken into custody where his case was processed. Cecilia Vega, who did the reporting on this is a transcript of this conversation, asked, did he have a strong asylum case? His attorney replies, we believe he did have a strong asylum case. He had also done a credible fear interview, which is the very first part of seeking asylum in the United States, and the government had found that his threats against him were credible and that he had a real probability of winning an asylum claim. Whenever people try to propagandize and they spread this fucking bullshit about the southern border just being open, that's a fabrication. The fact that this gentleman, the fact that Mr. Romero went and appeared in front of an asylum judge directly contradicts that, because if there were an open border, we would not have these stories. We would not have people being seen in the legal system. You are also allowed to seek asylum in a different country if the situation in your home country deteriorates enough. This is true of whether you're immigrating from Venezuela to Mexico. This is also true if you're going to immigrate from the United States into Canada or to Ireland or to UK. You are allowed to seek asylum. There is nothing illegal about that. But last month, Andrew did not appear for a court hearing. Mrs. Togzalowski says, our client, who is in the middle of seeking asylum, just disappeared. One day he was there, and the next day we're supposed to have court, and he wasn't brought to court. You used the word disappeared. Yeah, I used that word because that's what happened. But Andrew did appear in photos taken by Time magazine photographer Philip Holsinger, who was there when the Venezuelans arrived in Sikot. There have been other instances of people just straight up being disappeared by ICE, by plainclothes officers, typically for protesting in favor of Palestinian liberation. I think of Miss Ozturk, the student from Tufts University, who had six plainclothes officers roll the fuck up on her, and none of whom presented their badges until she had already been fucking kidnapped. Holsinger told us he heard a young man say, quote, I'm not a gang member, I'm gay, I'm a stylist, and that he cried for his mother as he was slapped and has had his head shaved. By comparing Holsinger's photographs to photos of Andrew's tattoos taken by the government, we were able to confirm that this is Andrew. His lawyer, who was representing him pro bono, had never seen these photos before. Lindsay Tuklowski says, it's horrifying to see someone who we've met and know as a sweet, funny artist in the most horrible conditions I could imagine. You fear for Andrew's safety in there? Ms. Vega asks. Absolutely. We have grave concerns about whether he can survive. In October, Tom Homan, who is now the White House border czar, the ogre-ass motherfucker himself, told 60 Minutes that the Trump administration's mass deportation plan would start by removing the worst of the worst. We're going to prioritize those with convictions. We're going to prioritize national security threats first. We have to do that. You got to get the worst first. But are they the worst? The Trump administration has yet to release the identities of the Venezuelan men it sent to El Salvador last month. We obtained internal government document listing their names and any known criminal information. We cross-reference that with domestic and international court filings, new reports, and arrest records whenever we can find them. Before we get into the data, know one thing. ICE has a quota that they have to meet for deportations. They have to round up and kidnap and deport 1,200 immigrants a day. There are not enough criminals to justify that fucking count. Even if we're talking about people who fucking jaywalked or who were doing like 35 and a 25, even then, there are still not enough people, enough quote unquote criminals to justify that number. At least 22% of the men on the list have criminal records here in the United States or abroad. The vast majority are for nonviolent offenses like theft, shoplifting, and trespassing. About a dozen are accused of murder, rape, assault, and kidnapping. For 3% of those deported, it is unclear whether a criminal record exists. But we could not find criminal records for 75% of the Venezuelans, 179 men now sitting in prison. Keep in mind, these nonviolent offenses are fucking property crimes. Like, these are not reasons to deport people. When you get into more serious crimes, again, murder, rape, things of that nature, I do believe that they should still go through due process. It is only fair. You cannot have due process for me, but not due process for thee. Because again, if you get rid of due process for somebody, you get rid of due process for everybody. In response to our findings, a Department of Homeland Security spokeswoman said many of those without criminal records, quote, are actually terrorists, cool, human rights abusers, gangsters, and more. They just don't have a rap sheet in the U.S. You're a fucking idiot. If you believe this, you have been lobotomized, whether you're aware of it or not. You can't just refute data and say, no, they're terrorists. What makes them terrorists? Did they do terrorism? Because as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to make the accusation that someone is a fucking terrorist, you have to present that information. Did they yell bomb on an airplane? No? Oh, I guess they're not a terrorist then. Gangsters. If they're gangsters, they would be committing crime. Human rights abuse. I don't want to hear shit about human rights abusers from the Department of Homeland Security and ICE, by the way. But even then, they just don't have a rap sheet in the U.S. This fucking dipshit apparently doesn't know that 60 Minutes looked at international court filings as well. This is just a fucking asshole trying to justify the racist actions of the agency that she's employed by. Tom Homan said immigration agents spent hours concocting rigorous checks on each of the men to confirm that they're members of Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan gang President Trump campaigned on eradicating. You can't just look at a Hispanic person and say they're Tren de Aragua. That's racist. That's racial profiling 101, although I can't say that surprises me when this is a law enforcement organization. Yeah, dude, the gay makeup artist with the autism awareness tattoo is fucking Tren de Aragua. Donald Trump to expedite removals of the Tren de Aragua savage gangs. I will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. I apologize. I don't think I called it that in the beginning. I think I said like the Alien Sedition Act or some shit. And dismantle every migrant criminal network operating on American soil. But in Andrew's case, the only evidence the government presented in immigration court were these pictures of his tattoos, crowns, which immigration authorities say can be a symbol of Tren de Aragua. I heard someone make a really silly point, but I think it's funny to bring up. LeBron James has a crown tattoo. Is he Trende Aragua? Do you see how fucking stupid this justification is? In any other instance, if your lawyer presented evidence like this, you would literally think to yourself, dog, I'm going to jail if this is my lawyer. This is like Blue's Clues level fucking, this is like a Blue's Clues lawyer. Lindsay Togzalowski says these are tattoos that not only have been these are tattoos that not only have a plausible explanation because he is someone who worked in the beauty pageant industry, but also the crowns themselves were on top of the names of his parents. The most plausible examination for that are of his mom and dad are his king and queen. I apologize, I've mixed up his tattoos with somebody else's. But again, I did mention these tattoos in the beginning. This is not a fucking criminal. This is just a guy who came to the United States to make a better life for him and his family. Cecilia Vega asks, could it be possible that there is something that perhaps the government knows that you don't? I don't think that is possible, but if it were possible that they had some information, they should follow the Constitution, present that information, give us the ability to reply it. I'm sorry. This is a silly question to ask. Obviously, any law practitioner knows that if you are accusing somebody of a crime, if you are prosecuting someone, you have the burden of proof. You have to present the evidence that this person did something. The government, the United States government, has said on multiple occasions that they're arresting and detaining people who have not committed a crime. Mahmoud Khalil was kidnapped and sent to Louisiana. The White House said there was no crime that he committed, except for the crime of criticizing a foreign fucking country. It's the same thing. It's the same thing here. The government has no evidence. That's why they are not presenting it, and that is why this lady is doing a pro bono case, because this is a monumental legal moment. We are talking about the preservation of due process here. A DHS spokeswoman said on social media that its intelligence assessments, quote, go well beyond just gang affiliate tattoos. She said Andrew's, quote, own social media indicates he's a member of TDA. We went back a decade and can only find photos like these. Is he posting pictures of him hitting a fucking lick? Is he posting, is he doing a fucking money spread with a bunch of cocaine in the background? How can you peruse this guy's social media and think that he's a fucking gangster? Tattoos in social media were also used to link another Venezuelan migrant, Jersey Reyes Barrios, to the Trende Aragua gang. Immigration court documents include this Facebook post from 14 years ago, showing him flashing what officers said was a gang sign. The girlfriend told us it was about rock and roll. Did he fucking put this up? Did he do this? And the fucking cops are like, this is a gang sign. Dude, this is middle school level shit. This is in 6th grade when you and your friends literally start doing random shit with your hands, and you're like, bro, we're in a fucking gang. Like, we're in a gang. Meanwhile, you're a white kid from the fucking suburbs. Like, you grew up in Chino Hills or you grew up in the Hamptons. Like, you're not in a gang. You're not in a gang. You just listened to Nirvana for the first time. Immigration agents also flagged Jersey's crown tattoos as a gang symbol, but they did not mention the crown is above a soccer ball. Jersey was a soccer player in Venezuela. His lawyers say the tattoo honors his favorite team, Real Madrid, whose logo includes a crown. This is very common. You see athletes across all of the major sports who have this same style of tattoo. As I mentioned, LeBron has one. I think Bradley Beal might have one. There's a bunch of guys in the NBA that have this style of tattoo. Organized crime analysts told us members of the Salvadoran MS-13 gang can often be identified by signature tattoos, but Trende Aragua is different. Celia Vega, are tattoos a reliable indicator of membership in Trende Aragua? Lee Galern, no. Expert after expert tells us tattoos are not a reliable indicator of whether you're part of this particular gang. Lee is an attorney for the ACLU and is leading the legal challenge against the Trump administration's efforts to send migrants to CCOT. Cecilia Vega asks, there are a lot of people who might hear what you're saying and say, these people don't have papers. They should be deported. To that, you say what? If they're here legally If they're here illegally and don't have a right to stay, they can be deported back to their home country. If they've committed crimes, they can be persecuted and perhaps spend many, many years in the U.S. prison. It's not a matter of can these individuals be punished. It's a matter of how the government is going to go about doing it. Once we start using wartime authority with no oversight, anything is possible. Anybody can be picked up. Thank you. This is huge for due process. I will say this, if they are here illegally and don't have a right to stay, grant them that right to stay. Have a more robust processing process for immigrants. But yes, the government is going about this very recklessly. Last month, President Trump did what he had promised on the campaign trail. He invoked the 1798 law called the Alien Enemies Act, which allows the president to remove non-citizens without immigration hearings during times of war or invasion. There have also been instances where legal residents and citizens have been picked up in these raids. They're just fundamentally trying to get rid of every non-fucking white person in the United States. Every administration back to 1798 has understood this is wartime authority to be used when the United States is at war with a foreign government. The administration is saying, not only are we going to use it against a criminal organization, but you, the courts, have no role. You cannot tell us whether we're violating the law or stop us. Does the U.S. even have the legal right to send someone who's been deported from its country to a foreign prison? The United States does not have that right. I want to go back to World War II. The last time any president used this authority, we sent people back to their home country. We didn't send them to a foreign prison. Even during World War II, Germans had the right to contest their designation under the Alien Enemies Act. As one of those judges pointed out in the appeals court, Nazis had more process than we're giving to these Venezuelan men. Well, listen, pal, I assure you that not every fucking German immigrant was a Nazi. Just like how every fucking Japanese person who was put in an internment camp because of this law was not a rabid nationalist who would do anything for the emperor. It's still wrong. It's wrong in every imaginable way. But if you are going to enact this law, if you are going to follow this draconian process, you at least have to have these cases be heard by a judge. Before the three planes arrived in El Salvador, U.S. District Judge James Boasberg ordered the Trump administration to turn them around. Flight tracking data shows two planes were in the air at the time and one was about to take off from Texas. Instead of turning around, all the planes made a stop at a military base in Honduras. And then, despite Judge Boasberg's verbal and written orders, the planes all flew to El Salvador. Since then, the U.S. government has disclosed very few details about the operation. They're doing that intentionally, by the way. CBS News published the only list of all 238 deportees. Lee says the government is refusing to answer almost every question from the court. Based on what grounds? Well, now they've invoked what's called the state secrets privilege. They are saying they can't even confirm details about the planes. We asked the Department of Homeland Security spokeswoman what evidence the government has besides tattoos and social media posts linking people like Andrea and Jersey to Tren de Aragua. She cited state secrets and ongoing litigation as the reasons, quote, DHS cannot comment on these individual allegations. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who visited CCOT last month, declined our request for an interview at the prison. She recorded this video. She was standing in front of the cell packed with Salvadoran gang members. I'm sure you have all seen the video by now. The Trump administration is paying El Salvador President Nayib Bukele's government $6 million to house prisoners it sends to CCOT. Lawyers and family members of the Venezuelans told us they've had no contact with the men since they've arrived. Do you have any idea how long they might be there? Alirio Antonio Fuenmayor says, quote, we have no idea. Alirio Antonio Fuenmayor's younger brother, Alirio Guillermo, was picked up by immigration agents while working as a food delivery driver in Utah. Though he had no criminal record, he was sent to El Salvador last month. Fuenmayor says he's an innocent person, he's not committed a crime, and he's in a maximum security prison. The ACLU has spent decades challenging immigration policies of domestic and Republican administrations, but on the fate of the Venezuelan men, Cecilia Vega asks, what would you say to these families who are terrified right now about their relatives currently sitting in this prison in El Salvador? Lee replies, I hope so, but, there's real danger that they There's a real danger that they remain there. Vega replies, "You're saying that there are Venezuelans who very well may have no gang ties, that are right now in one of the hardest of hardcore prisons in the world, that may never get out. They may never see the light of day." Lee replies, "That's what I'm saying." It is so frightening. Not just the fact that these people, not just the fact that these people have been sent to a slave labor camp, but the fact that these people, these mostly innocent people, have been deported without due process to a slave labor camp.